asked if the Lib Dems get their way, which of these could be a criminal offence? The answer is all three.
And welcome back to Monday's show with Steve First, Anne Diamond and Jimmy Osmond. So to come this morning, we're going to get your thoughts on the Christmas advert TV ad said to smear ordinary women. 0207 173 5555 is the number. You've got something to say. It's the Harvey Nicks ad, right? First, though, calls to make domestic bullying and mental cruelty, to put it another way, a criminal offence. Now, Nick Clegg, him again, and his Lib Dem colleague Lynn Featherstone want to create a new law, a domestic violence law that encompasses both physical and mental cruelty. Because at present, someone who punches or slaps their partner could be prosecuted under assault laws, but refuse to let your lover, I don't know, see their chums or have any money, and there's little the law can do about it. The Crown Prosecution Service accepts domestic violence, does include verbal abuse and other forms of abuse, but they don't have a specific offence to prosecute. Harassment, I guess, is about as close as it gets. Now, of the 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men who suffer under the umbrella of domestic violence, 2/3 will have been mentally and physically abused. The rest will have suffered just mental abuse. They wouldn't have been punched, kicked or slapped. Psychologists reckon verbal and mental abuse can be just as damaging as physical violence, something that EastEnders fans will have seen in the case of Zainab and Yusuf.
Get out. Yusuf, out. Masood was right. You lied. You wormed your way into our house. Why did you do that?
I wanted to be with you.
He warned me about you, but I was too stupid to listen.
I love you.
And, lest we forget, of course, she ended that episode by saying, let's get married. OK? Now, campaigners believe 3/4 of all incidents of domestic abuse are not even reported, in part due to the fact that non-physical abuse, mental cruelty, isn't perceived as a crime. And the only trouble I can see or foresee with the new crime of domestic abuse that includes mental cruelty is how on earth you police psychological nastiness like being starved of cash, barred from seeing your friends, watched or monitored whenever you use an email. I mean, you could use text messages or emails, I guess, to back up your claim. Friends and relatives might voice their support, but in many, many cases it will be your word against theirs. And another thing, which is important, Anne, is what is to stop people making malicious claims of mental cruelty against a partner?
It's going to be a very difficult one, but I just get the feeling that, I mean, if you talk to any police chief, they say the biggest challenge facing them, by far and above anything you might consider obvious, is domestic abuse.
Yes.
Because the police are very aware of it. They're called out very often.
And you mean by abuse, you mean both mental and physical?
Well, because they're often called out when it gets physical, and then they're stopped. Often by the person who called them out, and they're sent away again. Yeah, and they are aware that things are going on in that household that they can't put their finger on. They can't do anything about it because there is no law.
How, in these hard times, I'm thinking of families where it goes to the traditional stereotype, he earns the money, she's at home looking after the kids, she wants to go out and get Christmas presents for the kids, and he says, I'm not giving you any money. She knows that he's spending it on beer down the pub with his mates, and I'm sure this is a scenario that affects millions of people. At what point does that domestic situation become domestic abuse?
God only knows. I don't know how you would prove it.
It.
I can only think that this has come up because the police have said, we just need a few more strings to our bow, whatever the phrase is. We just, when we know this is happening, we need to be able to line it up so that we can make some sort of a case against this person, because it's continuous. Because I know the police are called out time and time and time again to the same front door and are very often turned away at the last minute.
They work with legal precedent, though, don't they? That as soon as a case has been tried, then other cases are measured by...
But how do you police? How do you determine a bloke saying, no, you can't have any money because there isn't any money, to a bloke saying you can't have any money as a form of domestic abuse? I mean,
the only thing you can do is hope that you can pull in character witnesses and other people who know the couple, but it must be a very costly procedure. And when you think about the amount of rape cases that are thrown out of court...
The vast majority.
Yeah, and you just... you wonder how many women
Yeah,
are
but
going to come forward as victims
thinking,
anyway.
I mean, they're even suggesting this law might be able to cover stalking and things like that. And I just can't help thinking maybe it's because the police... We've often complained in the past, haven't we, that you go to the police and you say, this is happening, and they say, well, we can't do anything until he does something.
Yes.
And I just wonder if this is an attempt to maybe bridge that gap.
But you then can see the flip straight away, which would be that somebody who doesn't like their partner or maybe being about to be dumped by their partner suddenly phones up the old bill and says, he's reading all my emails and won't let me see my friends.
Yeah, but you'd have to prove a consistent pattern, I think, wouldn't you?
But you can't police everything. I mean, this,
How can you
this
prove
comes very close.
he doesn't give me any money? How can you prove
Honestly,
that?
I mean, I
Cash.
do not
What
know.
was your
Maybe-
agreement that you had verbally in a marriage anyway that he's not adhered to or has? I mean, yeah, you're right. It's.
I think we'd be better spending time empowering women.
And men.
building,
Men are
and
victims of
men, and
domestic
men
violence as
with
well.
their self-esteem. I mean, this hits very close to home. Even in my own family, I've seen these situations played out. And it comes down to the person's feeling trapped. And their self-esteem is so low that they just put up with these things, and they don't need to. But I think we'd be better off spending time empowering people rather than trying to govern everything. Because it's impossible to try to see if someone's abusing the system or not, you know, because that definitely could be.
I hadn't considered that there's this other approach. You said how you empower people. I don't know whether you start in schools or whether you leave it to social workers, but actually... I prefer your suggestion, actually, because I think the law...
How do you empower somebody who's enslaved and depressed?
Well,
I think you empower them with options, with people to talk to, with options to get them out of their situation. Because most of these people, and again, it hits very close to home for me, they're afraid. They're afraid of their partner. They're afraid that they can't make it on their own financially. And if there's a safety net out there, an infrastructure for them to know that they could leave and have a happier life, then I think that they probably have greater success with that than calling the cops in. You know, what are they going to do, really?
And also, I mean, I said before, the domestic violence affected my family, and that you wait so long before you react that actually... I don't know. I just don't see it work. I can understand where the motivation is coming from, that something needs to be done. I'm just not sure legislation is the way to do it.
Well,
I'm sorry.
No, I quite agree that I quite agree that we're not saying we'll give the police new powers to charge in your front door and charge your ex-husband with this, that, or the other. What I'm saying is that if there is a need for just a certain little bit more in the legal framework that actually would enable, it might be helpful.
Okay. And highlighting's a great idea. So you know.
Yeah. Granted. Let's throw it open to you. Mental cruelty, mental abuse, should there be laws to prohibit it? Kirsty, what do people say?
OK, we have Graham first on line 1.
Graham, good morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm OK, thank you for asking. Thank you for asking, actually. So what do we think, then? Do we need this new kind of law?
I'm not sure about the law, Matthew, but I was on the end of mental cruelty with my girlfriend.
Say again?
I was on the end of mental cruelty with my girlfriend.
Right.
I ended up hitting her and going to prison for it.
So she mentally abused you to the point that you lashed out and you went to prison?
Yeah, I was 39 and a half, I had no record, good job, lovely kid. And she pushed me to breaking point, I stabbed her, and ended up going to prison for 3 months. And I've been labelled a woman beater in the street and a beating up. And she's come out of this smelling of roses, basically, got compensation.
Now, so Graham, if the Lib Dems got their way and there was new legislation, you would have been able to call up Plod at some point prior to you lashing out, and you could have called them in to deal with the mental abuse you were receiving from your girlfriend. If that law existed, it's an awkward question to ask you, but I have to ask you, if that law existed, do you think you would have called in the police to and accused your girlfriend of mentally abusing you?
Probably not.
But it would have strengthened his mitigation.
I'm not sure it should be a police issue. I think there should be maybe help groups and things like that you can both go to.
So this is Jimmy's...
It's very hard to prove it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was called all sorts of things by my friends. Behaviour was erratic and she was extremely passive-aggressive.
Yeah.
And I've never done anything wrong in my life before. And ended up in Wandsworth, came out homeless. It just ruined my life. It's only now, the last few months, I'm back to myself again, really. And it affected my next relationship. Didn't trust her at all, and everything she said, I was sort of I was paranoid about this. You mean it? What you going to do? It's just a horrible experience.
Oh, well, I can
we're
imagine.
both victims.
Yes.
We're both victims.
And both perpetrators, ultimately.
Sorry, say again, Matthew?
And both perpetrators.
Completely, yeah.
So
I've held my hands up. I pleaded guilty. But I kept saying to the police in the interviews, what about what? Look at my record.
But Graham, there's no law, right, that says mentally taunting somebody like this should be punished, whereas the Lib Dems are saying there should be. So actually, thinking about it now, in your case, when you're down there, you hold your hand up, say, I hit her, but here is all this mental abuse I'd like you to investigate. They would then, if the Lib Dems got their way, actually have grounds to investigate. Whether they did, of course, Graham, whether they chose to exercise that right is something else. They might just say, well, we've got one for domestic violence, now he's going to give us his excuses. A fascinating case, and thank you for picking up the phone. I'm actually now coming around to thinking maybe there is a cause for changing the law. Thank you. Let's have another.
Okay, we have Mary on line 3.
Good morning, Mary.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. So, do we need new laws?
I think the point is it will be very hard to carry out those sort of the laws because you have a lot of men, as far as from my personal experience, who are very charming characters, and to the outside world they seem like the most perfect gentlemen, and inside the house they're completely opposite to what anyone would ever believe. Yeah. I'm talking from personal experience for 20 years.
Yeah.
And in terms of empowering, one of the presenters talks about empowering women. I think if I had a place to go to get counselling, how to deal with it, how to move on. I left 3 times. I left the marriage 3 times.
Yeah.
And then after 2-3 years, he'll come back and woo me. I had 4 kids within that time. And I just didn't know what to do because I didn't want my kids to suffer. He was in a way a good father, but he was very controlling.
Mary, are you saying that Jimmy's suggestion of more support, improved infrastructure would ultimately have been more pragmatic, more useful to you than a law?
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, you
interesting.
Because don't you?
Like talking about your self-esteem, you lose your self-esteem. I'm someone to friends and family that know me as seen me as a very strong character. And when you're dealing with somebody of this nature, who on the outside, on the street, seems like a very generous, pleasant, charming man, and in the house comes in and bullies you. I mean, I've had moments where I have not done what he wanted to do, and he'll take the car from me in the morning and bring some dead car for me to drive with the kids. Times where I've asked for money, and, you know, he'll give me little or nothing, just looking for ways to demean me, even in front of the kids. And, you know, because I try to protect my kids from this sort of witnessing this kind of behaviour. I tend to dance to his music just so that my kids don't fight and arguments, you know.
Well, then, you see, I don't mean this in a flippant way at all, but nagging, right, which is generally perceived as something that women do to men, and it's just part of the thing that women do and men receive, would also, I guess, ultimately be considered an act of, or could be construed as an act of mental cruelty. Men will often allow themselves to be nagged because you're looking at me in a funny way there. I mean, I'm serious. I'm serious that it's all degrees, and the extreme cases you can hear they make perfect sense, and you think, well, there's justification for a law, but you can think of the
But that's why I think the framework of the law should be there. Yeah. So that you, if in an extreme case, so that you can actually pin certain things to the framework.
It would just be so abused. I really do.
We also think how many people like are in Mary's position, and they will leave that to one side for the sake of keeping a family unit together.
But she said she preferred Jimmy's suggestion, which is improved infrastructure, improved support.
I think what's sad, though, is the decay of the family, I mean, that we're all seeing. I mean, I grew up in a home, I was very blessed to have a mother and a father that loved each other and expressed that love and mutual respect. But now, kids are being raised in these families that are broken, and they don't know how to treat each other. And it's such a hardship for them. It's a very complicated issue.
But I'm very glad you chipped in with that part about more support, because it was ignored by the papers, and it's a great point to make. After the ads, then, we're looking at this Christmas ad for an upmarket fashion store and asking, is it snobby? is the subtext that posh women can go... Have you seen the ad? I don't know. I only just saw it this morning. It's the subtext that posh women can go out all night and look good on it, whereas the rest of you look like ropey old losers, sluts even. 0207 173 5555 is the number, whatever your view. Even if the ad is snobby, that's not exactly a crime, or is it? That's what we'll find out next.
People have watched the Walk of Shame ad online. 38,000, 380,000 or 3.8 million. Find out after the break.